To Die For movie synopsis by Zillur Movies Recapped. To Die For is a 1995 satirical black comedy film directed by way of Gus Van Sant, and written through Buck Henry, primarily based on the novel of the identical title by way of Joyce Maynard, which in Flip used to be stimulated through the story of Pamela Smart. It stars Nicole Kidman, Joaquin Phoenix, and Matt Dillon, with Illeana Douglas, Wayne Knight, Casey Affleck, Kurtwood Smith, Dan Hedaya, and Allison Folland as helping cast. Kidman was once nominated for a BAFTA, and gained a Golden Globe Award and a Best Actress Award at the First Empire Awards for her performance. Her personality has been described as struggling from narcissistic character ailment in the scientific journal BMC Psychiatry. The movie consists of cameos by using George Segal, David Cronenberg, writer Maynard, and screenwriter Henry. It facets authentic tune by means of Danny Elfman. Plot: Suzanne Stone has constantly been obsessed with being on television, aspiring to grow to be a world-famous broadcast journalist. She marries Larry Moretto, the usage of his household restaurant commercial enterprise to preserve herself financially stable, and takes a job as an assistant at WWEN, a nearby cable station, in hopes of mountain climbing the community ladder. Through relentless persistence, she's finally promoted to doing the station's nighttime climate report. When Larry begins asking her to provide up her profession in want of assisting out at the restaurant and beginning a household with him, Suzanne straightaway starts off evolved plotting to get rid of him. She manipulates the high schooler topics of the TV documentary she has been making, Teens Speak Out, into doing her bidding, seducing Jimmy Emmett and coercing him and his friends, the delinquent Russell Hines and the shy Lydia Mertz, into killing Larry. With the assist of Russell and Lydia, Jimmy finally commits the murder. Though Larry's loss of life is dominated the end result of a botched burglary, the police stumble throughout a Teens Speak Out clip of Suzanne at their faculty which factors to her sexual involvement with Jimmy. The teenagers are arrested and linked to the crime scene. Lydia makes a deal with the police to communicate with Suzanne whilst carrying a wire, and Suzanne unwittingly displays her hand in the murder. However, in spite of this damning evidence, Suzanne argues that the police resorted to entrapment and is launched on bail. All the fees in opposition to Suzanne had been dropped with lack of proof that she ordered the homicide on her husband. Basking in the media spotlight, Suzanne fabricates a story about Larry being a cocaine addict who was once murdered through Jimmy and Russell, his purported dealers. Jimmy and Russell are sentenced to existence in prison. Russell receives his sentence decreased whilst Lydia is launched on probation. Meanwhile, Larry's father, Joe, realizes Suzanne used to be in the back of his son's demise and makes use of his mafia connections to have her murdered. A hitman lures Suzanne away from her domestic via posing as a film studio executive, kills her, and conceals her physique below a frozen lake. Lydia tells her aspect of the story in a televised interview and positive factors country-wide attention, turning into a celebrity. Janice, Larry's sister who constantly hated Suzanne, practices her determined skating on the frozen lake, the place Suzanne's corpse lies. Suzanne Stone, Kidman, is aware of precisely what she wants. She needs to be a TV newscaster and she is inclined to do something to get what she wants. What she lacks in intelligence, she makes up for in bloodless willpower and diabolical wiles. As she pursues her intention with relentless focus, she is pressured to damage something and every person that may also stand in her way, regardless of the remaining value or skill necessary. In the coastal city of Little Hope, New Hampshire, following the homicide of Larry Moretto, family, B.U. DDIES and friends of Larry and his wife, Suzanne Moretto, who goes professionally by using her maiden identity Suzanne Stone, are interviewed via the media about the Morettos and their marriage. Despite each Larry and Suzanne being attractive, the purpose for their favor to be husband and spouse have been now not apparent to all and sundry else that knew them. Slightly dim and superficial however pushed wasp Suzanne sees herself as the subsequent Jane Pauley, being well known usually her intention in life. Blue-collar and ethnic Italian Larry, who labored in the household restaurant, desired Suzanne first and primary to be a spouse and mother, even though he did assist some things she did to similarly her career. These interviews are in giant phase accomplished due to the fact of the professional and unofficial faith that Suzanne may also have orchestrated Larry's murder. Larry's sister, parent skater Janice Moretto, does be aware of deep in her coronary heart that Suzanne is involved. Another individual interviewed is Ed Grant, Suzanne's boss at a small 2D charge cable station. Although Ed solely employed her to be a Girl Friday, a job he firstly predicted being stuffed via an unskilled teenager, she beat him down so tons with her proposals to make herself an on-air character that he subsequently gave her a job as the station's on-air climate girl, which she morphed unilaterally into making her very own documentaries. Others interviewed are Jimmy Emmett and Lydia Mertz, two of the topics in Suzanne's documentary on teenagers. Jimmy and Lydia have been delinquent and unfocused earlier than Assembly Suzanne, into whose lifestyles of repute and romance they effortlessly received sucked. The most important query is if Larry's murderers will be caught and if justice, mainly in the eyes of these who in reality care about Larry, most specially his family, will be served. In Little Hope, New Hampshire, the stunning and warm Suzanne Stone needs to be well-known and as an aspiring TV personality. She marries Larry Moretto, whose father owns a restaurant, and convinces him to use this financial savings for the college shopping for a Mustang for her and a condo. Then she accepts to work for the nearby station, receiving minimal wage to improve her personal projects, which includes one with youths in a public school. She meets the punks Jimmy Emmett, Russell Hines and Lydia Mertz and information hours of tapes interviewing them. When Larry invitations her to work at the restaurant in a genius exhibit that he needs to implement, Suzanne sees a hazard to her deliberate profession and decides to get rid of her husband. She seduces Jimmy and convinces him that she is in love with him. Then she tells that Larry is a brutal man and Jimmy decides to kill him. What will manifest to Larry? Nicole Kidman is proper on goal in this exceptional darkish comedy, an adaptation of the Joyce Maynard novel which was once itself stimulated by means of a infamous actual existence story. Nicole, searching clearly ravishing throughout, is a totally self-serving sociopath named Suzanne Stone who's surely hellbent on reaching her private American dream of being a TV personality. When she realizes that her best man husband Larry, Matt Dillon, in a stable exchange of tempo performance, is going to be an impediment in her path, she turns on the warmth and convinces dumb as dirt, lovelorn teen Jimmy Emmett, Joaquin Phoenix, in his step-forward performance, to bump off Larry. She then proceeds to play to the media to her heart's content. 22 years later, this movie model stays highly rattling relevant. In the generation of truth TV, the place simply about any character can grow to be a celeb for no absolutely appropriate reason, and repute and fortune is nevertheless considered as a profitable goal. Working from a screenplay with the aid of actor Buck Henry, director Gus Van Sant offers us a absolutely absorbing movie with a honest quantity of thoughts to mull over. Like any right darkish comedy, it is humorous in a twisted type of way. I'm certain some humans who've observed the story, or examined the book, or viewed the movie, have to comprehend one or greater human beings like Suzanne Stone. And great forged full of acquainted faces as the actual drawing card. Phoenix, Casey Affleck as his degenerate friend, Allison Folland as the awkward female who hangs out with the two of them, Dan Hedaya and Maria Tucci as Larry's parents, Kurtwood Smith and Holland Taylor as Suzanne's folks, Tim Hopper and Michael Rispoli as investigating detectives, Wayne Knight as the supervisor of a nearby TV station, and specially Ileana Douglas as Larry's sister, a cynical kind who has Suzanne pegged proper early on. Making cameo appearances are creator Maynard, as Suzanne's lawyer, screenwriter Henry, as a huffy teacher, and filmmaker David Cronenberg as the mysterious man at the lake. Kidman is a wonder as she actually struts her stuff for the camera. Ultimately, one does sense quite sorry for Jimmy when it is considered simply how pathetic he clearly is. He's simply one of many characters who get jerked round via Suzanne, a grasped manipulator if ever there was once one. Gus Van Sant is section of the fixture in American impartial cinema and though, To Die For, used to be a piece of work that got here from the studios, he movies the story of this lady go-getter prepared for something to exceed glory and reputation in a very non-public way. It's constructed on an alternation of current moments in which a range of characters who crossed Nicole Kidman's route discuss about her and flashes back that relate the flip of events. Characters such as her parents, her former younger lover and buddies categorical their ideas about her barring succeeding in grasp her. There seems the first pleasant of Van Son's work. The really elusive persona of her foremost woman persona who specially manipulated her shut spouse and children to go up the social ladder and to attain her ends. Manipulation is very current at some point of the work with the conspicuous presence of TV and camera. And you have to see the distinction between the dynamic Suzanne Moretto, Nicole Kidman, and her as a substitute listless husband Larry acted by way of Matt Dillon, and specially the teens who dangle round us like Jimmy Emmett, a younger and appropriate Joaquin Phoenix, or Lydia Mertz, Alison Folland. There seems Van Son's signature. To Die For consists of some of the filmmaker's obsessions revolving round an American formative years who is adrift and lacks of marks for their future and security. What Jimmy and Timid, hung up Lydia want is real love, something that Suzanne cannot honestly supply them. And her format to file on an American excessive college is solely a capability to set up a little greater her galloping ambition. Van Son will resume his set of subject matters about a ramshackle American childhood and will hone it with his masterful Elephant, 2003. The preference of the surroundings, Moretto's house, and the brightness of the cinematography, Nicole Kidman's makeup gas the really quirky aspect of the task, and Van Son would not deprive himself of gently laughing at her girl heroine. I dig the moments when she goes to the workplace held via Wayne Knight to ask for a job and ends up internet hosting the climate forecast on a little nearby area. A challenge she painstakingly fulfills. Nicole Kidman holds her position at arm's size and has a top-notch display presence. It's simply a disgrace that Van Son would not emphasis adequate on the insanity that seizes Suzanne after the homicide when she is interviewed via the journalists. But see it anyway for Kidman and the manner Van Son tells this story of ambition, manipulation and hypocrisy. And David Cronenberg has a stunning cameo at a well-appropriated second in an integral step of the heroine's fate. In a black comedy loosely primarily based on the notorious Pamela Smart homicide case, Nicole Kidman takes her obsession with turning into a superstar to the last extreme. That she used to be one excessive preservation female Matt Dillon need to have regarded when he married her. But beau absolutely amoral she was, who ought to have guessed? After all, she was once a female to die for. To Die For is one of the excellent movie commentaries on the subculture of movie star and what we will do to end up one, at least some of us. If you do not suppose there is a lot of reality here, simply assume about what positive humans are doing proper now to come to be a lackey for Donald Trump and a quality buddy of Paris Hilton. And they're doing it on TV for thousands and thousands to see. Nicole Kidman is at her most lovely and most amoral in To Die For. She's married to working-type man Matt Dillon, who helps run the household restaurant owned via his father Dan Hedaya. Nicole works too at the nearby TV station run via Wayne Knight and begins out as a receptionist, however works her way up to climate girl. But she's received ambitions for so plenty more. But all she sees is her common man husband standing in the way. To resource in her closing layout, she befriends three misfit teens, Casey Affleck, Alison Folland, and Joaquin Phoenix, and makes use of intercourse with Phoenix as a drug. He turns into obsessed with her, and quickly he and his pals are inclined equipment in her schemes. I have to say that in this movie Nicole Kidman offers what I suppose is her first-class performance. Director Gus Van Sant certainly added a true one out of her. There is not every person who watches this movie who would not be a inclined device for her. The three teen accomplices are all exact and stand out for my part, with Folland, who was once making her display debut, and Phoenix, each touching in their very own way. But I do like Dan Hedaya in this additionally, who makes use of some ancient usual techniques to get his vengeance. Ancient common household fashion vengeance, I would possibly add. Anyone who is fascinated in the cult of movie star as each a serious find out about and amusement have to no longer leave out To Die For.